Hello, everyone. Welcome to Achieving Success with Olivia Atkin. I'm your host, Olivia Atkin. Each week, we will discuss the roadmap of achieving your personal and professional success. We will give you real-life stories on growing personally and professionally to achieve your life and career goals with the help of some top-notch guests. Today, we are speaking with Enrique Acosta Gonzalez. Enrique is the founder and owner of Triad Leadership Solutions. Enrique is also the best-selling author of the book Alliance Pride, The Scars That Silence Kings, and co-author of the book Voices for Leadership, Your Pathway to Becoming a More Influential Leader. Enrique is also the podcast host of not one, but 3 different shows, Developing the Leader Within, The Leadership Void, and Aloha Friday Live. Enrique was also a Navy sailor for 26 years. You can find Enrique by going to his LinkedIn profile, his website, triadleadershipsolutions.com, or by emailing him at triadleadershipsolutions@gmail.com. Hello, Enrique. It's fantastic having you on the show today.
Thank you, Olivia. It's a great honor to be with you and share some time. I'm excited.
I'm super excited. And let's get right into it because I know you're going to have some amazing takeaways for our listeners and just some great conversation with me. So to start off the show, can you tell me what success means and looks like to Enrique Acosta Gonzalez?
Yeah, I love that question. And I'll tell you, the success is individual. However it is that looks like to you, just make it work. But to me, success to me is indicated by the footprints I leave, the hearts I touch, the lives I inspire, positive change in, the families impacted and transformed by those changes, and eventually the regifting of that touch and others for generations to come. That is true success to me.
And I love that. And I think it's so true. You can individually impact others who then pay that forward and can impact others and grow and learn. And there's so many different ways a small impact can end up changing so many different people's lives, like you said, for generations to come. So you've spent 30 plus years kind of impacting and changing people's lives, whether it was as a sailor in the Navy for 26 years, and even during that time, helping different individuals figure out what leadership is to them, helping them grow those leadership skills, or after your military career and being in the Navy, how have you kind of built that up where you put others and that mindset of growing leadership first?
Well, to be honest, Olivia, it was to right or wrong. And sometimes that's the quickest answer for that. As a young sailor, I just was belittled at the time by a supervisor, the highest level supervisor that we had. And I just couldn't understand how a person that has gotten to that stage in life, that position of authority, that you didn't have to prove anything to anyone else, would take it out on the young sailors that they had. Now, at the time, it wasn't all the sailors. It was just me, and that was just it. But after that first initial tour, I just told myself, I will never again allow someone to do that to me. And I will never again allow another sailor to see that type of leader, not as long as I had anything to do with it. So it was basically trying to undo the harm that was done to me and make sure nobody else went through it.
And I think that's so important. And it's so important to understand. Sometimes you understand who you are as a leader by seeing the wrongs that other people do around you. And you have a voice. So even though you might not be in a position of leadership at that moment in time, you can be a leader to your peers. And you can make others around you understand by example that just because one person who is in a leadership role is making certain decisions, that does not mean necessarily what every leader needs to do to lead a group of individuals, whether it's peers, family members, friends. there can be other ways of approaching situations. There can be other ways of looking at situations as well.
Yeah, for sure.
For you, after leaving the Navy and transitioning into speaking and helping and writing books and hosting these podcasts, what have been some of the major leadership skills you have learned along the way that you try to teach others?
Yeah, great question. I would say it would be like 5 just basic things. I will encourage any leader to go add to that, right? You don't have a toolbox with 4 or 5 tools in it. You have a collection. That's what you have if you do that. But if I was to summarize it, I would say the very first thing you need is humility. If as a leader, you don't know what humility looks like, or you don't know how to comfortably operate in humility, you will become the person that will be made humble. And so the sooner you get that under your belt, the easier it is to navigate those times where humility is required. And oh, by the way, everybody that has ever served or followed any leader that sees an indication of humility in a positive way will definitely be grateful to you. So humility would be the first. The second I would be saying, and probably more important than humility, would be truth. Now, I'm not talking about the subjective truth where everybody thinks they're doing it right. Foundational truth, things that will allow you to build a building upon. Those foundational truths have to be the cornerstone of whatever it is that you're doing as a leader. And if you do not have foundational truths, you will fall for anything at any time. So I think that's important. Thirdly, compassion. I was one that obviously just told about my experience. There were no areas or times where compassion was applied. And as a leader, you must know that we serve alongside other humans that have moments in their life where they need compassion and grace applied. And if you cannot do that as a leader, what you'll do is you'll bulldoze over your people. And believe me, before long, you won't be the leader, even if you're in that position. Fourthly, I would say zeal. Who likes to follow someone that's not excited about their own thing going on? You have to have a zeal enough to help your team look at a mission or a project with some type of expectation. And if you cannot show that as a leader, don't expect your people to follow and be the cheering section if you can't believe that it's worthwhile to have that type of exhilarating moment to say, hey, I know this might not look as what it is, but I tell you, after this is going to be a great moment, and everybody likes a zealous leader. But I will caution this. Zeal alone won't get you there, and zeal alone can derail you. So apply some discipline to that zeal, which is the last thing I'll say. Discipline, discipline, discipline. And a disciplined leader, what they show their folks, their teams, is that there is a process, there is a methodology about going at things. And if you're not disciplined, you will be all over the place. So if I was to say at least 5 tools to put in that box, would be those.
And I love those tools, and each tool brings a different aspect into what a true leader can look like and be like, and put that forward. For you, in different settings that you might be in, whether it's a book, a speaking engagement, your podcast, your family life, whatever it might be, how do you approach different leadership areas, even when it's not a formal leadership role you're taking on, but you're exemplifying it? What are some of the things you do?
Well, I tell you, I just think about the person looking at me, that person listening to me, that person that aspires to be something that I am at the moment. I take the follower into account. And if you start to do that, you won't ever look at things just one way. You'll have to look at things in terms of impact. And if there's anything a leader has, it's impact, it's influence. And you must care for that as you would like a baby.
Mhm.
A leader that does not take care of making sure that they cherish and they put into place or things into place to keep their impact and influence intact is setting themselves up for failure. So I think about the follower and what they are looking at.
I think taking that follower and the impact you have, whether it's through your actions, through your words, are so important. What are some of the things you practice or you try to help others practice when you talk about that impact and keeping someone else in mind in the decision making that you're doing at that time?
Yeah, well, I'll tell you that uh, if your house is not in order, eh, sooner or later it's going to come out, right? So I always think of, am I setting the example firstly for my home? I could care less to lead anybody else. Now I'm in positions that I do, but I could care less to lead anybody else if I am not leading my home. It makes no sense because what will happen is that someone will notice that you're one way at home and one way it's somewhere else. And then that's just a double-minded person, right? That's a duality type of person. And then are you everything that you say you are if you're living two different lives, right? So
Mhm.
I always encourage folks to think about what are they doing personally within themselves and the impact they're having at home, and can they take that out into the workforce and be happy about it.
I think that's really important is it always starts in a foundational spot. And no matter what you're doing or who you are in your life, there's always someone you're impacting. There's always people around you that you can elevate by being a good leader. And you can practice those skills and hone those skills with individuals in your everyday life. For you, as you said, you have a family and it starts at home. So as years have shifted and your, good days, bad days, how do you try to lead that within your family? And how do you try, I know you have a son, how do you try to demonstrate that to him as he's growing up?
Well, it's important to have somewhere to run to, right? We all need something or someone to run to. For me, it's God, right? I have something bigger than myself. I have something that has been here for the ages, right? Way longer than I've been. And I get to anchor myself in those foundational truths. I was talking about foundational truth earlier. I get to anchor myself in something that is bigger than me and will always keep me in check. It's amazing how that process for me has allowed me to become, and this happened not so long ago. My son came to me one afternoon and says, "Dad, I need to talk to you." I say, "Yeah, so what's going on?" He says, "I want you to be my mentor." I don't know how many dads out there, right, um, have ever had their child come to them and say, "I don't have a mentor. My first mentor, I want you." But that will probably bring any dad to tears or some type of emotions afterwards. It sure did for me. So anchoring myself in something like that that is unshakable allows me to be able to regroup myself and then present myself in the best possible way for those that I love most, which is obviously my family.
And I love that. And I think, like you said, I could see you even getting emotional telling the story. And I think for anyone, when someone's close to you and you're making impacts in other people's lives and you might not hear it all the time. The actions you have and the impact you have on other people around you, it doesn't always get told back to you in the moment
Right.
or understanding those impacts you made. I remember recently, actually, a good friend of mine, we were driving and I hadn't seen her. It ended up since COVID had hit. I'd actually seen her like 2 months before COVID hit. COVID hit, and then she's away at school right now. She just graduated, so I'm very proud of her. But we had been planning once things had lightened up to do something, and then what extreme weather conditions got to it and all this stuff. So finally, after almost 3 years now, we were able to see each other, and we're driving and we're having this conversation. And I got a call about something with the business and I handle it. And then we're just talking. And she turns to me and goes, I want you to understand, listening to you and how you talk to other people and how you handle situations and how stressful. She goes, I can tell that was a stressful situation, but you handled it like, it was no problem at all. And you made the other person feel so comfortable. She goes, I wish I could grow up and be just like you. And everything you do, you have no idea the impact I've had and how I look at you and how you handle things. And in that moment, you always want to lead by example, like you talk about. And it's such a great leadership trait. And no one's perfect. So we all make mistakes and we all sit here and go, was that the right decision? Am I helping someone in the moment, even if, am I impacting someone in a positive way? So to hear it from someone who's so close to you, who you talk to all the time, who you feel is connected to you, lays such an extra impact in knowing, like, even on your hard days, you're helping someone else and giving them someone to look up to say, hey, they're doing it, I can do it too. For you, those younger professionals where you can help them grow skills that they don't have to be in a position years later. It always starts at the bottom. If you can hone your skills at a young age and lead by example, you can alter how people act themselves and who are later in their careers. What are some of the things you would tell that younger individual to make them not make some of the decisions that they even might be seeing from other individuals who are older than them, and it might be seen as normal?
Yeah, growing up has so many different influences on you, right? You can train someone in one way, and then they'll go back to an environment that will basically cancel that out, right? So you're asking young people to be a little more responsible than normal in those circumstances. But if I was to tell, in general, young people something that need to consider is their value. Their value as a human, their value as a person, man, woman, whatever it may be, and to consider that when they're making decisions and how those decisions will either enhance that value or take away.
And I think that's great and so important is to understand your value. And everyone has value. Whether, like you said, you can add value to a situation or you can take it away. But the other part of that too is let's take the saying, the smartest person in the room, right? You hear it by a lot of people, and there are individuals who want to be the smartest person in the room. But I remember listening to Shaq have a conversation, who is a phenomenal basketball player. I personally love Shaq, but not necessarily fully for what he's done on the court. I love for everything else he does. And I think he's so many different layers. And one of my goals in life is to have Shaq on the show. So, hey, maybe if we put it out there, it'll happen. But I think he makes so many business decisions and operates in a way that so many people don't know. But one of the things he had said a while ago was he tries to not always be the smartest person in the room, because if there's a door to go through where you can learn from others to then enhance your toolbox to be a smarter person in the room, you should be doing that as well. And he always said he can be the smartest person in one room, but he wants to at least have one other door to not be the smartest person in the room. Because when you're the smartest person in the room, you need to continue to elevate yourself. And I think that's totally true. So your value, as you were saying, it can add, you can be adding value, you can be taking away, but there's also that space where you're not necessarily adding value to the conversation. You're sitting there and adding value to yourself because you are learning, and that it can be just as pivotal than adding value to the room.
Yeah, there's a saying I like to share is that the loudest sound is heard in silence. Mm-hmm. You do not have to be talking all the time to make a big impact in a room, like in an environment, right? I remember many days where I would be called in to participate in meetings. I wouldn't say a word because there was more value in receiving at that moment than there was for me to speak. And then there were times where I was required to speak, and I would make sure that it was pointed and appropriate. And then that's it. So know how much of that value you do need to put in there, but definitely know yours.
How do you think individuals who are sitting here going, okay, am I adding value to a situation, or am I learning my value or potentially taking away? How do you think, or advice you could give them to understand what position they are currently in that situation?
Yeah. And so value is not positional. Value is internal. Mm-hmm. So because some people say, okay, well, I'll feel important when I get to here. Well, it's too late. It's too late by then. Right? While you've been trying to feel important, there's been a bunch of important people coming through. So you have to get that down. Now, if you need to speak to somebody, go ahead and find out what that value is. And sometimes that's what's needed. But getting there is just as simple as you realizing why you were made. Why you were made, for what purpose you were made. And believe me, there's 50, 60, 70-year-olds still trying to figure that one out. But you can shorten that learning time by speaking to somebody, mentors, coaches, teachers, folks that do podcasts like ours, right? That is leadership centric. Talk to these people and figure that out sooner than later. But it's definitely something that you have to do. And just ask questions. Don't be afraid to ask questions. What does that value look like? What does it look like in the workplace? What does it look like in a park? Because believe me, I can go to a park and influence people. Mm-hmm. Right? So what does that look like? What does that look like for you? And how can you make it work for your day-to-day?
And I think you brought up a very good point. I think all of that was a very great point. But I think one of the things that touched me there is it's not just about your traditional senses of being a leader. It's also, like you said, you can walk into a park and end up being a leader. I always say you can be a leader in every environment you are in. The approaches might look different. The situation might be different. But if you hold yourself accountable and you hold yourself to your own standard of what is right, what you think a good leader does, and bring that to those environments, other people feed off of it. And I think it's so important to understand that there are times where you might not know what to do or how to handle a situation. But if you bring that evolution and that environment of we are all here, we can all make those right decisions, there's a way to approach a situation, other people can feed off that and it creates a better environment.
I'll give you an example. I was at Legoland, right? And we was in line for the Slurpee. I wanted the big one. Because it was hot. We're in Orlando, right? So the actual venue was like half circle shape. And the line was going out straight from the window but there were sides that were shaded. And I'm looking around and we're all baking in the sun now. And I'm like, hold up now. Why are we in one line going away from the building when we can form a line along the building and be in the shade? I stopped everybody right then and there. I said, everybody, we can still make a line along the side of the building and we'll all be in the shade. So let's go. And instantly, everybody saw the value of that decision. No one knew me. I knew no one. And we all lined up against the wall around the building, still in line. And everybody was like, thank you for that. Mm-hmm. You telling me out of a line of 50 people, nobody thought of that, right? So, but that goes to show you, if you know your value and when to add it, it will be in the benefit of anybody, even at Legoland. Now, of course, my wife was like, hey, we ain't working.
Sometimes you also get those kids that are like, Dad, stop embarrassing me. Why are you going to say something? Like, you never know how it might come off. But in the long run, like you said, if you know what you're adding to the situation, you know its value and how it can help people, you're not going to have someone in line start screaming, like, why are you trying to tell us what to do? Everyone's going to go, oh, my God, we really appreciate that. Because, again, Orlando, any amusement park, when it's hot, it's hot. In the South, like in general, right? No matter what state you are in, it can get hot sometimes. Even in Northeast areas, in colder areas, summer can get hot. And sometimes you just need someone to have that idea to be like, and question it. It's that decision to question why we're doing something that can change the whole topic and how something happens. Like you said, you can take a line, for example. Well, why are we going straight back? Why can't we go around the wall? And then there's no reason that you can't follow the wall in the shade. Let's just do it. And that's sometimes those small decisions like that is what a leader does in helping the grand scheme of things. It's the questions of why, right? And for example, in supply chain, they have a theory called the 5 whys. And it's a root cause analysis theory of, if you keep asking the question why, you finally get down to the bottom line of what the root cause issue is. I personally think you can take that to every aspect in life, starting a business, solving any problem, to be quite frank, is if you ask the question enough times, you figure out the answer. The answer might not come to you in round 1. It might not come to you in the first 5 minutes, 50 minutes, 500 minutes. But at some point, if you keep digging away, there becomes a solution or what the issue is, that then you can say, okay, this is where it's stemming from. What can come out of it?
Well, why will lead you either to the reason to or the reason not to.
Mm-hmm. And that's the other thing. Problem solving and taking problem solving approaches go hand in hand in leadership so much. So for you, approaching situations and trying to solve problems, how do you do that while being a leader? And what does that look like to you?
Well, I said this not so long ago. Leaders don't solve problems. Mm-hmm. Leaders lead others to solve those problems. Because if you can solve all the problems, why you need followers? And nobody likes a leader that thinks they can solve every problem. Mm-hmm. Because you're solo. You might as well do it yourself.
Right. And if you solve all the problems, then there should be no problems.
Exactly, right? So a leader facilitates the solution. They take folks that know how to actually solve problems, and they facilitate that, because they can solve problems, but they can't coordinate each other, right? So that's what a leader does. Those are examples of some managerial skills, right? And being able to manage things. But a leader leads people to the solution and to actually coming to the fact that they can solve it, right? So I would say leaders just need to understand that they're not there to be the one end all to be all. That's why I mentioned humility at first, right? And you mentioned the room and who's smarter. I hope to never be the smartest person in the room, because at that point I know I'm not in the right room. But there are times where you will be the subject matter expert over a thing in a meeting, in a room, and that's okay. So leaders that want to get to solving problems, they just need to know how to lead those people.
And follow-up question to that, and you brought up a great point of understanding that the people around you should be the ones
Yeah.
solving it. They should have a voice. They should bring that voice. For you, what do you think the approach to finding the right people for a team, or having the right voices being heard? What's the importance of that, and how do you kind of approach that?
Yeah, team dynamic is something that's it's tricky.
Mhm.
You have to, as a leader, know the differences in people and how a combination of differences actually is a strength in order to bring a team together to solve these problems. Leaders that don't know or care enough to find out about people will shorten their tenure, either physically because you're not in the position anymore, or in the minds of your people. Either way is bad, right? So if you take the time to know the differences in people and how you can combine those differences, will make you probably one of the most effective leaders that there are in the workforce today, especially with the onset of distance, right? Remote working. No one's at the office. Some people are at the office. You get there 2 days a week. All of those dynamics come into play. But the most important is knowing who your people are, what they bring to the table, and how to combine those for the success of the team.
And for you, you just brought up a good point, distance, because
Mhm.
now people work all over the world,
Yep.
different time zones, the in office, not in office. Some people go within a position and never see their coworkers
Right.
now at one point. So, how do you lead through a computer screen?
Yeah. You have to use all modes of communication. Video is perfect, right? Because you still can see a person, although you may have not been physically in the same room. You feel like there is a connection, right? So use video to all get out. That's what I would say. Secondly, voice, right? Voice is so important because the inflections in a voice tell you things and you can communicate more clearly. One of the last things you should use is text and email when with distance, because there's just so much left to interpretation that's not what you want to basically occur over a 12-hour period before they get to you. So use technology, use video, use voice, and consider the circumstances. What is the other person dealing with in terms of technology, right? You don't want to say, oh, wow, my video is 4K. You're like 720, 480. What's going on? No, and I mentioned earlier, compassion.
Mhm.
This is where compassion comes into play. Understand the circumstances of your people, their limitations, and how you as a leader are going to fill in the blanks, because that's what they need you for.
And I think that's really important, is understanding you're filling in the blanks and helping them communicate. And communication is so key, no matter your
Yeah.
age, the
Yep.
situation, and being able to communicate in a healthy way and in a transparent way where both ends, nothing gets misconstrued. Because like you said, sometimes things get misconstrued and it can be the difference of something going to the next level and taking a bad turn, or things going to the next level and really having a healthy conversation and dynamic. And that can actually end up affecting how someone interacts with you, how they perceive you, and everything in between. And I think sometimes people forget, like you said, the compassion aspect is you never know what someone's going through, but you have to bring compassion to the table while leading in a way where everyone also feels heard and validated. Because if we all have our missteps sometimes, but if you don't take accountability and lead in that way as well, of saying, hey, I could have handled this better, or I really should have had this conversation over the phone or face to face rather than email, because like you said, everything can get misconstrued. It can be the difference of someone saying, you know what? I don't want to deal with them. I don't want to work for them. I don't want them a part of my life, because look at what it's doing and it's now making me uncomfortable. So for you, how do you lead individuals sometimes in when things can get rough and have that misstep to kind of get back on course and have that direction of like, hey, yeah, there was a misstep. I could have done something wrong, but I don't want to tarnish that dynamic that we're building, whether it be in any situation. But as a leader, it can be so important to make sure everyone feels comfortable.
Yeah. Just remember, we're all human.
Mhm.
Now, remember that. Where did you start? Did you start at the top? No, you didn't. I'm sure you had some missteps as a leader going up. So as long as you can remember that, you'll give people grace and the ability to grow. Right? Don't ask for a 20-foot palm tree and you just got a coconut, right? It's not going to happen overnight. It's not going to happen overnight for them. Look at where they are, understand where they are, sympathize and empathize, and place some grace in there. Grace is usually a church type of name that is used, a word that is used. But even in the workplace, you can give some of that. See what the challenges are. Are you taking time to even understand what that person's going through? I had, and just like a lot of people, within a 1-year period, not even a year, 3 to 4 family members died. Boom. And so my work was suffering. And I had to pull the plug because I knew that I wasn't giving the 100%, nor was I able to, even if I tried. Right. So had my employer not taken that into account, I probably would have been reprimanded for this, that, and the other, but they took the time to understand my circumstances at that moment. And the departure was amicable, And so as a leader, are you digging even deep enough in the situation to understand where you can apply grace and compassion and things of those sorts? Dig deep.
And I think that's so important is the 2 things you really brought up there. Remember where you came from and that you've had growth, as well as you have to dig deep to make sure you're even understanding why something's happening. And Enrique, how can people get in touch with you if they want to connect?
Yeah, the best way is LinkedIn. That's where I reside most of the time. Enrique Acosta Gonzalez. I believe I'm the only one. And the other social media, Triad Leadership Solutions, we have pages, and Acosta Gonzalez on social if you want personal, but LinkedIn would be the best way.
Thank you, Enrique, for all of your insight today. It's been so impactful and so meaningful conversation that needs to be heard to grow ourselves. I really appreciate you joining us.
Oh, thank you. It's been a pleasure, and I really thank you for allowing me to be here with you.
A few of our key takeaways from today's conversations are The 5 tools of leadership, as I want to phrase it, those tools you need for your toolbox. The humility, fundamental thoughts, and that fundamental truth is so key, is to understanding it's not just your truth, but it's the fundamental truth, as well as compassion, zeal, and discipline. Those 5 tools everyone should add to their leadership part of their toolbox, as well as it starts at home. Your leadership and the impact you can make at others starts at your home environment, your friend environment. It isn't just the workplace situation. There's so many different places, small to large, that you can be making a difference and an impact in. And take that into consideration, because you can always be a leader. As well as video and voice is key to help with distance when trying to be a leader. It's that face-to-face and being able to read body language that can really help set up a situation for success versus a situation for disaster. And probably my favorite of today is the loudest sound is heard in silence. This was a great episode with our top-notch guest, Enrique Acosta Gonzalez. Thank you for listening and have a successful day.